Other business, Jim.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everybody's indulgence here for a little bit longer this morning. I know it's the beginning of a holiday weekend, but and this is kind of like a follow-up to the commentary we heard about the heavy truck traffic that we're getting and the anticipated increase in truck traffic that we don't expect. So at the beginning of last month, our Board of Cumberland County Commissioners, on a unanimous vote, I'm always happy when we have a unanimous vote, adopted a resolution number 9 of the year, calling for long overdue action to move the discussion, planning, and advocacy forward on the need for additional safety improvements, number 1, and capacity expansion on Interstate 81 in our county and throughout the region. And we know that here at our MPO hats and with our partners at the State Department of Transportation, that there are financial constraints that we face in meeting transportation demands of a growing region. We also know that there are an inordinate amount of hurdles, processes, and procedures that are in place that are intended to address our transportation needs. But at the outset on this subject, I jotted down this morning a few observations. Number 1, we are very appreciative of the State General Assembly's action of 5 years ago that provided for a significant infusion of new state dollars for transportation projects in Pennsylvania. A lot of them maintenance projects, a lot of them the backlog of infrastructure needs that needed to be met, and also that included the recent 2-mile widening of I-81 to 3 lanes between Interstate 581 and Route 114 in Cumberland County. That project has provided some much-needed relief to the congestion experienced in that immediate area on a regular basis. 2, we are also thankful, as Mike informed us again here today, that the project, albeit we consider it to be a Band-Aid to provide for cable median barriers along much of the I-81 corridor in Cumberland County and elsewhere to help prevent the incidence of horrific and deadly crossover head-on crashes, is hopefully coming to a completion before the end of this year. And 3, we are cognizant that PennDOT is currently evaluating a bid of $104 million, reported to be the largest single highway construction project in PennDOT District 8 history, to widen and rebuild Interstate 83 in Dauphin County here in our capital region. We support everything that PennDOT is doing and is trying to do. And again, we applaud those state lawmakers who stood up to do the right thing 5 years ago in passage of Act 89 of 2013. But as noted by the American Society of Civil Engineers, there needs to be additional resources to meet the necessary transportation capacity expansion needs that are already upon us in Pennsylvania and have been for some time, and will only grow in both the near and long term. Without question, there is a need for the federal government to stop talking about infrastructure investment and actually start to do something. And unfortunately, very unfortunately in my judgment, this being a highly politically charged election year for Congress, it doesn't appear that much of anything of substance is going to get done. Now that's my observation. But that's not only a disappointment, that is an absolute disgrace. Now, not that anybody likes taxes, okay? And not that a federal gasoline tax is the only answer, as we heard here today. But it's been 25 years since the federal gasoline tax was raised, or that there's been any action by the federal government to increase dedicated funding for transportation. And 36 people have lost their lives in crashes on Interstate 81 in the past 6 years in Cumberland County alone. On average, crashes total 270 on Interstate 81 in Cumberland County each year now. And of course, we know that bad driving habits, like speeding and tailgating, and I've got the most recent information from the State Police of Carlisle that points out essentially it's tailgating, distracted driving, and speeding are a lot of the cause of the wrecks that we have. But without a doubt, anybody who traverses I-81 on a regular basis, with ever-increasing interstate truck traffic, ever-increasing motor vehicle traffic, and ever-increasing congestion, can see the need for capacity expansion. I was just had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to fly out to California and drove back with my daughter who's relocating from San Francisco to New York City. So we drove across the country. My little sidebar, and this is not a scientific survey in any way, shape, or form, but except for congestion around Indianapolis, Indiana, okay, I didn't have any significant congestion, and this was a Sunday morning until I got off the turnpike at the Carlisle exit and got on Interstate 81 on a Sunday morning at 9:30, wall-to-wall traffic, mostly trucks. So there's a need for widening the 3 lanes in both directions where it doesn't exist. And, you know, that should be really from I-78 to the Maryland border. Now, I could go on, but our ask this morning is that our partners here at HATS join us in doing what we can in whatever way we can to prioritize planning for the capacity expansion we need, and that was identified in the contracted study that PennDOT conducted 13 years ago, more than 13 years ago. It's all in here. Okay. Widening study, recommended. Interstate 81, I-78 to the Maryland border. And at the time this study was produced, the projected cost was $1.5 billion. I understand PennDOT is working on some new estimates, but I think if we're discussing with Mike, we're looking now today at $2.7 billion. And those, you know, that's not going to go down, that's only going to go up. So, in any event, it's our belief that we shouldn't wait any longer in encouraging our friends at PennDOT to get moving on planning and design while we continue to push action by our federal government on the need for long overdue action to provide the resources necessary in the interest of both highway safety, but also interstate commerce, which is the lifeblood of our nation's and our region's economy. The term that's often used, we've heard it in the past, has been shovel-ready, and we know how long these projects take to bring to fruition. I-81 capacity expansion should be brought to a position of being shovel-ready. We owe it to our citizens, our residents, our businesses, to get it shovel-ready. And if we all sit back and wait until I-81 is a parking lot, we're talking about where trucks are going to park, okay? They may be parking right on Interstate 81 pretty soon. We will have all failed those who have entrusted us to serve today and those who will follow us in the generations to come. So this is not only about today, this is about tomorrow. And I will tell you that since we adopted our resolution in Cumberland County, the 42 municipal member Capital Region Council of Governments has adopted a similar resolution. We also have had discussions and support is coming from the Carlisle Chamber of Commerce and our business community in general. They see this. They understand the importance of this. This is critical to our region's economy. And again, I'm glad we're moving forward with the Interstate 83 widening to keep the trucks moving. And again, a lot of them are not coming just to stop here, they're going through. This is a lot of, we're talking big time interstate commerce. So now, I don't know what the specific process procedure is on that. I know we've got a regional transportation plan that looks out 40 years. We could offer comments and put that in there, or we could find out what the procedure is to get this on the interstate tip, or we could have a meeting with Secretary Richards. But I hope that we can all join together through our NPO, Dauphin, Perry, Cumberland counties, and I think we could probably hopefully get the support of the NPO from Franklin County and the NPO from Lebanon County to help get some attention to this. Let me just add that I've been doing a little research, and I see that the state of Virginia, Interstate 81 is also a big issue down there. They're holding, their Department of Transportation is holding hearings on it. And I think one of the proposals is for tolling Interstate 81, and tolling the trucks. I don't know where that's going to go, but usage, vehicle usage of our interstates may be one way to come up with funding. But again, this all goes back to the federal government. I'm sorry none of our congressional delegations here this morning. But we even have to get permission from the federal government if we want to toll Interstate 81. All right, so we need help from our federal elected officials. And we've reached out to our 2 United States senators and our congressional delegation. We've had a discussion with our Cumberland County state representatives and state senator on this issue and how important we think it is. I think we need to do whatever we can to try to advance this project. It's going to have to happen. The question is whether it happens in my lifetime. I hope it happens, for the next generation.
Well, I know, and after you and I spoke, I did some digging in. A resolution, I think, probably doesn't hurt on a PR's perspective, but in the real terms of things, we really need to get someone to fill out the work plan for our RTP to get the process started. So I would say have Kirk or someone fill out that form.
Yeah, we can do that. And again, the question comes back to whether this is a NPO project.
It's both. It's got to be both, realistic. Yeah. So I think if we get that form filled out, at least from our perspective, from our bureaucracy that drives our NPO, that helps get that started. And then I would ask Mike and Jen, you want to add to that, but I don't think anybody, and I've had conversations with Mike about, no one underestimates the significance of this problem. It really is not, other regions, and that's why the 81 coalition is together and trying to do things. It's a big problem. I think the federal government has tried to start that step forward, but I think the key in all this is we need to be working together and not trying to place blame with one or the other. And I understand that. I'm not saying you. I'm just speaking out loud for those out. So I think the better we can start to coordinate this, the sooner we'll get to that point.
Although my comments relative to the federal inaction are, I think, on point.
They are, but there's been the start of movement. So
yeah, let me just make a couple comments here. Let's talk about safety first. I think this won't be any news to anyone in the room, but we do have a project here we're going to bid next year in Cumberland County. Something we talked about, I think about a year or two ago. But we have it's about $15.5 million project. It's basically a pavement rehab. It'll take us from 233 to 34. Again, no widening associated with that, but what we committed to when we talked about programming this job is, again, a system in the middle to help reduce the number of crossovers. Now that's going to look a lot different. I think if you remember my comments before, than the cable median barrier. That the median through Carlisle is steep. It's not appropriate to use cable median there, so. To do that properly, there's some earthwork and things like that, so we'll actually have to decide as we're going down through the corridor And this will likely jump it back and forth from northbound to southbound, but we'll have to increase the shoulder width, we'll have to bring some embankment in there. We'll have to set a stiffer guide rail system a little bit further off the roadway, and we'll tie that to bridge approaches and piers and things like that. But one way or the other, as we get through that project, we will have some kind of positive separation in the median. And although the physical work limits for the roadway is 233 to 34, we had agreed also to look at a little bit further north to try to push that up to 114. Now there are a couple of areas, fortunately on 81, where you do have a pretty wide median, so we'll have to look at those. The other thing that we'd like to do with this, again, it's going to take some additional funding, but and nothing significant, but from exit 29 to exit 44, we have no cameras. So there's a 15-mile stretch. I have one cup of coffee, I think that's right now. We're kind of in the dark. Anything you do today with trying to alert the public, trying to flash up on the boards that we have some issues going on, takes that ITS component and cameras. So we're looking at doing something like that. Again, 233 probably seems to be an area, but right now I think we get as far south as 465, and then we have another one at exit 29. So that's coming right around the corner. We'll be bidding the job early next year. That work will be underway. The other thing in terms of safety, and I want to give a lot of credit here, I met an individual at PSP the morning of the tanker fire. His name's John Young. He's a lieutenant with PSP. And fortunately for everyone in this room, he's now the commander at the Carlisle Barracks. And we had a meeting with John and another member of PSP about 3 weeks ago. And again, hearing the concerns, I think in the last day or two, we put some variable message board signs out on 81, and I'll just read them here for what's going on. Again, the focus is from, we have miles out there between milepost 40 and milepost 57, but the concentrated effort will be 44 to 52. So again, this is just trying to get the general population to behave. You heard me say that before. So northbound on 81, you're going to see a two-paneled message board. The one panel will say safety corridor mile, 7 miles ahead, fines doubled. Those signs are already out there, but this will be a variable message board to try to get everyone's attention. The second part of that panel will be watch your speed. So that's a milepost 40 as you get into the safety corridor. It's a reminder, safety corridor, fines doubled. I guess a little psychology, speed limit 55, what's your speed? Again, just trying to get that behavior. Then same thing southbound, we'll start at milepost 57 with the same signs, and do the follow-up verification. Commander also told me he'd like to have a stronger presence out in the corridor, and I can tell you I've seen that already. These go in tandem. We put the signs up, state police gets out there. Right now we're thinking about doing it for 6 weeks. We wanted to try to get in place before the heavy July 4th holiday travel, so that's in there. Now, again, you've heard me say this before, and we do a lot of things like we'll throw some folks in a snowplow truck to get that experience. I don't know that I'd want to be a state trooper riding a ticket along I-81. To be frank with everybody in this room. So having a presence is one thing. Again, the message is that the worst violators, they're going to pull over and they're going to figure out a way how to do that, whether that's get them off to the end of the ramp. But as a trooper parking your car behind somebody and sitting there writing a ticket, I'm not signing up for that work. So again, hats off to Lieutenant Young and State Police. They're trying to help out with this. And then Jim, you mentioned the study was 2002, 2003. So again, over the last few years, we picked that up, we dust that off. We went back out to a consultant. We have a project manager, PennDOT, working on it, and the costs are higher, obviously, than they were before. But they're also higher for a couple reasons. We kind of put the blindfolds on us. We said, what would it take to add a lane 81 back at that time without looking at the interchanges along the way? And also the other thing that happened is the existing pavement out there is now 13 or 14 or 15 years older than it was before. So at one point in time, you're looking at adding a lane, maybe doing a little bit of rehab on the existing lanes. Now you're almost at a point where you got to start thinking about what's the remaining life of that. We're going to have that report finished up, and while this is open for debate and feedback, we also had indicated what maybe the priorities would be through each MPO. So we'll take hats. Again, I didn't want to get into this situation with Franklin and Lebanon. You know, they're going to have to weigh into that, but clearly, I'm comfortable in this room saying with what we already have in place, with what we have in Dolphin, with what we're doing on I-83, you know, the Carlisle area, I think, is going to percolate to the top pretty quick. So, you know, we can have that discussion.
And I think when you look at what's in here, you know, there was an acknowledgement that this is not going to happen all at once.
Right.
Got to do it by segments. We do have a significant portion that's already 3 lanes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, probably our biggest problem area right now is in and around Proline. We've got 5 exits that are in close proximity to one another. A lot of heavy truck traffic because of the access to the turnpike there.
Yeah, a couple of things to keep in mind. Having a specific truck lane on I-81, that's not going to happen in Pennsylvania because of the accesses at the interchanges. You know, if you're out in Oklahoma, nothing against Oklahoma, by the way. But if your interchanges are 20 miles apart and you have a hub out there and trucks are getting on, that's a lot easier to do. That's not going to happen here. But again, what you'll see in this report is about $3 billion. Now that includes some thoughts on, here's the other thing that wasn't a real hot item back in 2000, early 2002 and 3, but stormwater management is a little bit, I don't want to say a game changer, but it's something that we're going to have to certainly account for. So they're the pluses. We'll have that available. It's something that we can look at, you know, as part of the next tip update. And then again, I think this is good management, but we do have fiscal constraints at both the PennDOT and Federal Highway, and if you don't have good fiscal constraints, what happened 15 years ago is everyone was running around doing EISs for things that we could never pay for. So it will be in chunks, Jim, I think, as we move forward. I think everyone recognizes that. And then the other thing, this is Mike Kaiser, not PennDOT here, but you know, the tolling issue is something that I think at some point in time the state's going to have to wrestle with. But I want to go back to Wayne's comment. If you start tolling, now you really got to be careful because you will push people off the interstate. So we don't want to go through, make all these improvements out on 83, maybe have the lanes that we think we need, and then throw tolling on there and push traffic back on to Cameron. So, but I will say with electronic toll collections and things like that, there's a way now, I think today, that you know, if you're a local commuter and you're coming up I-81, you're getting on at 944, you may not get charged anything if you stay within 944 to Monpo 72, or it's 50 cents, you know, or something like that I think we have in front of us. The challenges are, with what we have in front of us right now, statewide, we're probably underfunding our maintenance of our interstates by about $600 million a year. So we have to keep that in mind. And then again, you know, whether this is appropriate or not in this part of the discussion, but this hit me too with the Lehigh Valley thing. The trucking industry pretty much replaced every job that they lost in Bethlehem Steel. Now, it'd be nice to have both, I guess, but you know, so there are economic wins there as well, but like I said before, it's the infrastructure at the end of the day. So that's where we're at PennDOT. Again, I think there'll be some tools here, Jim, that we can all look at. Harrisburg, Franklin County, Lebanon County, you know, certainly a lot more work to do on what the priorities are, but you know, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, you know, Steve, but you know, with the tip update, I think there's an opportunity here we can at least get started.
Okay. All right.
And I think that goes back to, it's important to get that work playing in there. That starts our process.
Okay.
Mike, if I can say one thing on the safety issue, when you're talking PSP, this is just, for whatever reason, it seems to be worse in the last year. Maybe I'm just noticing more. I call it left lane cruising, has got to be a major safety issue. I don't know how many times I've seen it. You'll go up, trucks try to go to do a pass, and then all of a sudden, there's someone in the left lane. I think they have it on cruise control, and maybe 2 miles over the speed limit, and
Right.
don't move. And they just don't move. That's got to be a safety issue, especially on hills and blind spots. So I don't know if on the message board we can say, move over to the right.
Right.
But I really think if PSP started pushing that a little bit more, we might avoid some of the problems.
You're more concerned with trucks.
No, it seems to be, it seems to be a vehicle
Okay.
getting over there and just cruising. And then what happens is the trucks go to pass, they get jammed, they can't move, and now you get these trucks trying to shift,
Right.
and it's just not working.
Okay, we'll have that conversation.
For whatever reason, the turnpike and on our interstates, I've been seeing a lot of, I call it left lane cruising. They
The number
just
of-
get there and cruise.
The number of on and off ramps contribute to that a little bit, you know, people.
But it's not trucks.
Right.
Most of the times, the left lane cruising, and in that case, I give truckers a lot of credit. They don't seem to be doing it. The left lane cruising is a tourist, it seems to be a lot of times someone just passing through, they get in the left lane, put it on cruise control, and never move.
They're trying to help meter traffic too, I think.
Maybe, but I think they're a safety issue.
I agree.
I just want to say, because I just found out about this yesterday, but I appreciate the additional message boards that are being put up and the signage and that, and hopefully we can knock some sense into some irresponsible drivers. There's no question, I'm going to tell you how old I am. It was 50 years ago that my dad, taught me how to drive. And one of the things that I remember this, and I stress this with my 3 girls, and taught them how to drive. Car length for every 10 miles an hour. You don't get right behind. Well, I don't know how many of you drive I-81 on a regular basis, but for the past 6 years, as the county commissioner, I've been on it from Enola to Carlisle on a daily basis. And I swear to God, most of those drivers never get told to stay anywhere as far as, a car length for every 10 miles an hour behind the vehicle in front of it. It is people on top of each other. Now, I don't know whether we have any provisions in the motor vehicle code for violation of that, or whether that's just considered reckless driving or something, I don't know. But and I agree with him, Mike, it's very difficult with the amount of traffic on Interstate 81 and the irresponsible drivers we have. It is dangerous for a state trooper. But I appreciate the fact that I understand they're going to be beefing up enforcement, which is good. I saw that they pulled, I don't know how many vehicles over about a month ago, over a 24-hour period. It was like, most of it was, for speeding, excessive speeding. So you need to have the additional enforcement. You need to have the warnings, the message, but we still got to address the congestion problem. And so, they're talking about these automated trucks, right? The traveling right behind each other. I don't know, like 5. I'm thinking, how in the world are they going to pass? It's going to. How does that work?
I'm going to go back to the chairman's comments there. I think all the autonomous vehicles, that's where we'll start seeing the benefits, because trucking companies today are already holding their drivers to a little bit higher standards, the bigger ones. Again, now, we do have a lot of small companies out there, so, we actually got complaints over here on 83 and on the Harrisburg side, 81, I should say. We took that down to 45 mile an hour. Again, I had conversations with my staff if that was too low, and I think to a degree it was. And, we're going to look at that a little bit closer. We get out there again, but that's what was happening. The general public was slowing down a little bit, not to 45, and then the truckers. Someone called us and said, "Hey, if I don't go to 45, my office knows." And it'll actually show up that it's a construction zone. So I think that part of it that may help us a little bit sooner rather than later, but it's the rest of the population that we got to try to behave. Okay. And one more comment, I will have Cumberland County maintenance out west of 233 to do some patching of that area, and We will have probably every variable message board that we own. And we will be taking out a lane after the morning rush hour, but we will reach out and let the media know, but please be careful when you're over there doing that.
Well, anyway, I look forward to working with everybody here to try to keep attention on this issue and move forward. I'll ask our planning department to submit the comments to the regional transportation plan and anything we can do to keep the ball rolling. And if we need to bring this to the attention of the secretary or the governor, I'm more than willing to have those conversations, and our federal delegation.
I'll ask Jen to comment and then we'll come over, Steve.
Great, thank you, Chairman. I don't think anyone will disagree that there are the transportation needs that we have here in Pennsylvania, here in Hats, and nationwide far outweigh our resources. I think that's something that everyone recognizes, that there is significant investment that's needed to both maintain our existing system, but then also meet our needs, both from capacity standpoint, but also from safety. And so those are integral to the mission of the Federal Highway Administration and USDOT. As you all know, there are a lot of different innovative financing options that are being discussed right now in Washington, and we look forward to seeing what comes out of that process. But at the immediate term, we would fully support the efforts to further study and evaluate how improvements can be programmed on a fiscally constrained TIP and long-range plan. I think that's really the value of the MPO, to look at this issue holistically, to look at the safety, congestion, maintenance, as well as land use issues that are emerging and continuing to evolve in this area, and to identify improvements that both meet those needs, but then also are within the resources that we have right now. So I just wanted to share that perspective, and we look forward to working with our partners to advance that goal.
Almost every dollar we run through this MPO would be tied up, not for a decade, but decades.
Yeah, I think it was a high 20 years, 28
Right.
years, something like that. That's
It was
not
just
too
shy of
bad.
30 years,
It's
3
Franklin, it's
decades.
London.
So that means no other project, that's how significant this issue is. And I just want, we're talking big numbers, and it's hard for the viewing public to understand what we're talking about. But that really means if we were to focus on 81, the significant problem on 81, as identified by PennDOT in the early study, at least preliminarily, we could do nothing else for close to 30 years. Steve?
Just follow up, Jim, did you contact the Troop H commander, whether, and deal with, or give them a copy of your resolution? Harrisburg?
I will check on that.
I think you should. I think they cover 6, 7 stations here in multiple counties. And knowing how they work here, I worked for them for 25 years, and if you get the station commander's attention, he can help out the lieutenant Mike's talking about there. It's like DUI patrols and so on. They can flood troopers in from other counties when you've got a serious problem. It might be draw more attention and give the Carlisle barracks a little bit more of a hand over there. You definitely have a problem down there.
Yeah.
Years ago, there used to be a law that you couldn't be in the left lane unless you were passing. They took that out. The only thing that's in there I'm aware of, if you impede traffic now, you're to pull off or pull to the right. But that left lane
Why'd they remove
restriction
that law?
went away. I don't know. I didn't really agree with that, but
I think it was due to the capacity of the roadway.
I think that's probably what it was.
I thought, to be honest, I thought it was still was the law. There's times I want to do citizens arrest on people. I'm glad you told me, that way I won't get in trouble.
I would definitely send that down to Troop H commander. Make sure they got a copy.
I tell you, it's frustrating at times. Skip, did you have a question or comment then too?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, and you mentioned it, but way back when, and I'm old enough to remember, the I-81 Corridor Coalition, which the Dauphin County and Cumberland County commissioners were instrumental in trying to bring that to being, and it still exists, but this capacity issue goes from Florida to upstate New York, if I remember how far 81 goes, and the Corridor Coalition was designed to try to address these issues and the funding issues using the I-95 model, if I remember correctly. And it seems like they're kind of stuck out there and they're not, to me, they have to be the instrument in some respects to engage our federal delegation in a broader sense than just the 2 senators from Pennsylvania and the 17 congressmen that we have, I think that's the right number, to engage, to get that kind of money that we're talking about. And it's not just in Pennsylvania, but it is in Virginia and Tennessee and whatever. So they've got to be engaged, and I just don't know exactly how to do that.
Yeah, well, with respect to engagement with the federal officials.
That's why they were formulated. That whole coalition was to engage the federal bureaucracy to try to work with the huge volume of dollars necessary to fix the problem.